going to go through two different modifications to my Fender Vibrolux reverb. It's a 71 Vibrolux reverb, and these modifications are reversible, and they both modifications include a way to leave the stock configuration in place so that you can play the amp 100% stock, or you can engage either or both of the modifications. One of the modifications involves changing the tremolo circuit a little bit. The other modification involves changing the negative feedback circuit. Okay, so let's talk about the tremolo modification first. And both modifications are oriented towards giving the amp more overdrive. Okay, one of Leo Fender's design goals as he moved away from the tweed amps, which had no negative feedback in their circuits by and large, one of his design goals was to try to make amps that were louder and brighter and cleaner. And we're trying to undo some of his changes. And the tremolo change had nothing to do with louder or brighter. It was just a cheaper way of doing tremolo that he designed. He came up with this design that involves using a light-dependent resistor and some little neon bulbs, forming like an optocoupler. And the issue, and what we'll address the tremolo mod first. Okay, the issue is that in the stock design, you're bleeding off some of the guitar signal from the preamp, and it's going to ground right here through the intensity pot. And if we could keep it from going to ground, then we'd have more signal going from the preamp right into the phase inverter, and we'd be able to get more overdrive. So the first modification involves changing this part of the circuit over here. What we're gonna do is replace the normal 50K reverse audio taper potentiometer with the same kind of potentiometer, but one that includes a switch on the back of the potentiometer, and we're going to use that switch to break this connection between the tremolo circuit and the preamp. Okay, so you need to get a 50K reverse audio pot that has a switch on it. It has to be the kind of switch that's engaged when you turn the potentiometer on, not a push-pull switch. You don't want that. Now, I've seen these sorts of potentiometers for sale on eBay. I've seen them for sale at Weber VST. I've seen them for sale at Mauser. I don't know where they'll be available at the time that you see this video, but you can check those places and any of your other normal, resources where you would find potentiometers. This is a pretty well-known and standard modification, so you'll find some of these pots if you look. Google is your friend, okay? So we're going to take out this pot and replace it with a pot that has a switch on the back that enables us to break this circuit right here so that we're not bleeding off guitar signal to ground. We're forcing more guitar signal from the preamp right into the phase inverter. Okay, so that's the first mod. We'll come back and talk about how to do it with a little diagram in a minute. Okay, the second mod involves changing this negative feedback circuit up here. So the idea is that they recognize that if you take some of the output signal and you feed it back into the phase inverter, it tends to clean things up a bit. And if you take out this negative feedback circuit, it tends to make the amp sound a little bit hairier, develops more overdrive faster. Okay, so Leo, when he moved away from the tweed designs into the brown and blonde designs and then into the blackface and so on, he started using this negative feedback circuit. He started out in some of the early, I think they were brown amps, using pretty large negative feedback resistors, and he wound up eventually settling on an 820 ohm. That's the kind of negative feedback resistor that you frequently see. that allows a good deal of negative feedback back into the phase inverter and cleans things up notably. Bravo, except we're going to try to undo that now. So there's a couple of ways you could undo that. And what we're going to do is repurpose the grounding reversal switch that's on the back of the amplifier. The idea is, in modern households and circuitry in the U.S., we all have grounded electrical systems in our domiciles and businesses. And modern amps have grounded AC connections. And we don't need to be able to reverse the ground on AC connections. In fact, it's not a good idea at all. So the switch that's in these old amps, you'll find them in blackface and silverface amps. By the way, this modification only works, the first one only works when you have this type of tremolo circuit. I forgot to mention that. If you have a bias vary type circuit or something that isn't bleeding off signal to ground, then this isn't going to work. It won't be necessary. Sorry, back to the negative feedback. So we're going to repurpose that three-way ground reversal switch. Some amps only have a two-way ground reversal switch, in which case you're going to have one less way that you can do this modification. You can still do something, but you can still get rid of some or all of the negative feedback if that's what you want to do. But with the three-way switch, with a three-position switch, you do have three different types of sounds that you can get. So what I've chosen to do is to use one position to keep the amp stock. Okay. The second position on the switch I use to add an additional resistor here in series with the 820 ohm. What is the value of resistor that you use in series? It's kind of up to you. You want to experiment with different values. I chose 4.7K after some experimentation. You may find a different value. Then the third position of the switch enables me to get rid of the negative feedback circuit altogether. It just breaks this line right here, so there's no more negative feedback. And that's how I'm using the three-way switch. Okay, now let's take a look at some diagrams that will help you understand how to implement these modifications. First, we'll talk about the tremolo intensity modification, intensity knob modification. Okay, so this represents the potentiometer looking at it from the back, and normally they all have three terminals. This one goes to ground in the stock configuration. This has a brown lead connected to the roach, the optocoupler gizmo, little black guy on your circuit board. That's what he connects to. And the third terminal over here normally connects to a yellow wire, and that yellow wire goes to the preamp. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take out that potentiometer, and you're going to have a little difficulty taking it out probably. On my Vibrolux Reverb, the bias trim pot is in the way, and I had to unscrew it and push it to the side in order to make room for this switched potentiometer in the back of my panel. You may have to do the same. I also found, unfortunately, that the ground wire that they used was no longer long enough. We are going to hook this back up once we remove the stock potentiometer. I found that the ground wire wasn't long enough, and I had to put a different one on that was longer, which is a bit of a pain because you need a very hot soldering iron. I have a particularly large soldering iron that I use for this kind of job, because this is grounded on that brass bus that Fender used. So you may find that you have to do that as well. It sort of depends on the nature of your switched pot and how it fits in there. The way the one that I used fit in, I didn't have room to orient it such that this could remain connected. So I had to put in a new ground, and you may have to as well. So as you can see, all we're going to do is we're going to connect one side of the switch, and it doesn't actually matter which side. One side of the switch gets soldered to this connection gets redone to the wiper, and this one gets reconnected to ground, as I mentioned. And then you take the yellow lead and you just connect it to the other side of the switch, and that's it. So what happens is when you turn the switch on, when the switch is all the way off, the pot's all the way off, this connection is broken. Okay, and that's how you implement this modification. You're essentially breaking this connection here between the preamp and the tremolo circuit. Okay, that's how it works. And when you turn the knob on and you get past the click, then you've essentially reconnected this connection here. These two are now connected, and we've got our preamp connection once again is connected up to the pot right here, like so, and then the pot works just as it normally does. Okay, that's all there is to this one. It's really pretty simple. Now let's talk about the negative feedback modification. Now let's cover the negative feedback modification. The idea here is we're repurposing the three-way ground reversal switch. That's what I have in my 71 Vibrolux Reverb. Many other amps you may have only a two-position switch, in which case you won't be able to do the complete mod. You can just do part of it, whichever part you decide you prefer. In my case, however, I do have a three-way switch. So this drawing shows in a schematic form what's going on. Okay, you have this three-way switch, three-position switch. In one position, you're including a 5K or 4.7K resistor in series with an 820 ohm negative feedback resistor. That means you get less negative feedback, which means more overdrive. In this position here, when it's connected this way, you're bypassing this 5K resistor and you're just connecting directly right here. In which case, that's the stock configuration where you're just using the 820 ohm negative feedback resistor. And if you throw the switch into the middle, then you've broken the connection here altogether, and you've taken the negative feedback out of the circuit, and that gets your highest level of overdrive. So if you only have a two-way switch, I would suggest that one of the positions remains stock and the other position remains including a resistor that takes out some level of negative feedback. And you may decide that you'd prefer to take all the negative feedback out. That's kind of up to you. I sort of prefer the sound of a little bit of negative feedback myself, but that's just a personal preference. So here's how it works in terms of what you're doing in the back. This is drawn as if you're looking at the rear panel of the amplifier from the inside. You're standing in front of the amp and looking at the rear. Okay, so it's a three-way switch here. You have your extension speaker jack and your regular speaker jack here. On the board is over here. You've got your 820 ohm negative feedback resistor. In the stock configuration, this is connected over here to this terminal on the extension speaker jack, which is connected with a little jumper over to the main speaker jack. Okay, we're going to take the wire that's coming from here, and we're going to unsolder it from here, and we're going to connect it up to the middle terminal on the three-way switch. Okay, the middle terminal. And then we're going to wire a 4.7K resistor across these two poles of the switch, or two terminals on the switch. So, and then we're going to take a lead and we're going to hook it back up from this terminal over to the first terminal where the negative feedback was hooked up before. Okay, so what happens is when you throw the switch this way, when the switch is in this position, you've connected these two terminals. So the standard 820 ohm negative feedback resistor is connected directly to the extension speaker output. Okay, and when you throw the switch the other way, then this terminal is connected to this one. So you've got the 5K resistor connecting over here. So you're connecting 820 ohms to 5K to the negative to the extension speaker jack here. Okay, and in the middle position, both connections are broken. So that's as if you've broken the connection altogether here. That's essentially how this works. That's all there is to it. I hope you enjoyed these two modifications and find them relatively easy to do. And if you enjoyed watching this video and learning about this stuff, I suggest that you subscribe to my channel. I'll continue making and uploading videos of interesting amplifiers and modifications and so on as time goes by. I've been doing it for a long time. Got a lot of cool videos on my channel already. Thanks for watching and stay safe.